He said Grace's name, Dan whispered. They must be trying to get a ransom out of her, said Amy. A deep, terrible panic was setting in. It seemed to pulse through her like a heartbeat so intense it made her lightheaded. What was the other thing he said? Dan said. About a Vespa. They were wearing helmets, Amy said. Her vision was slowly adjusting to the darkness. She couldn't see much, but she could see that Dan's eyes were wide with fear. She had to keep it together for her brother. Amy pulled her cell phone out of her pocket. The light from the screen illuminated the contents of the dumpster around them. It was blessedly unfull, but Amy couldn't help imagining the vermin that probably made the place their home at night. Under the blue light of the phone, Dan's face was pale and serious. Huddled up in the corner of the dumpster, he looked as terrified as she felt. I'm calling the police, Amy said. Make sure they aren't right outside. Espionage is what ninjas do best, Dan said with a weak grin. He tried to sound tough, but his voice was thin and shaky. Dan rose up to risk a slow, careful look out from a small hole chewed out of the top corner by rust. Two dark-clad figures stood near the entrance of the lot. The gate was wide open now, and Dan could just see that one of the figures had the handles of what he assumed were bolt cutters hanging out of his pocket. Two of them are watching the exit, he whispered. It looks like the third one left the big one with the red stripe on his jacket. These guys really came prepared. They cut open the chain on the fence. Cut the chain? Amy whispered. She swallowed, attempting desperately to shove the fear down into some manageable compartment of her brain. She needed to think. She needed to get help. I'm calling the police now, Amy said. Oh no, she thought. Her stammer was starting as it always did when she was nervous and had to talk to people, and she was more than just nervous now. She was delirious with fear. Amy looked down and took a deep breath. Somehow, she managed to dial 911 into the phone with her shaking fingers. She placed it to her ear and was startled when an operator answered after only a single ring. 911, a woman's voice said coolly. What's your emergency? Hi, Amy said, trying to remain calm. Don't stammer. Don't stammer. Don't stammer. Hello, yes. My brother and I are near Hyde Park, and these men are trying to hurt us. Can you tell me where you are exactly? The operator said, her voice becoming serious. I'm not sure, Amy said. We got a little lost. Dan peeked out of the dumpster again, then immediately shot back down. Hang up, quick! In a panic, Amy ended the call. Seconds later, she heard the snow crunch as feet passed in front of the dumpster. They then stopped. Then the whistling began. Amy and Dan sat in silence, not daring to breathe, barely daring to think. Just above them, one of the kidnappers casually and deliberately whistled a creepy old children's song called Aloe that Amy recognized from school. The song was about plucking the feathers from a small bird. This was it, Amy realized. They were caught. Dead, maybe. The guy was toying with them. They waited for what seemed like an eternity. The whistling sounded like it was right in Amy's ear. Her lungs burned with the effort of holding her breath. Then the song suddenly finished. Amy expected the dumpster lid to go shooting up, to see that terrible black visor staring down at them. Instead, the crunching footsteps slowly moved off. Amy breathed in the rank air of the dumpster, and it felt like a miracle. It was all she could do not to break into tears. "They're going to check the dumpsters eventually," Dan whispered after a few moments. "And they said more guys were on the way." His voice was shakier than Amy had ever heard it. "What do we do?" Amy said. "I can't keep calling the police and hanging up. I don't even know where we are." Amy jumped when she heard a loud, metallic bang coming from the far end of the lot. "What's that?" she whispered. Dan looked at her with round eyes. "They've started," he said. It was the sound of a dumpster lid being thrown open. In the darkness, Amy heard Dan unzipping his backpack. "I have an idea," he said. "But we have to be prepared to run." Bang. "What's your idea?" Suddenly, a light flared in the dumpster. In one hand, Dan held a Sterling Zippo lighter. In the other was the pack of bottle rockets Amy had gotten him for Christmas. "Where'd you get that lighter?" she demanded. "Frida," Dan said, closing it. "She left it behind. Remember how she was always talking about camping and outdoorsy stuff? She said she kept a water-resistant lighter on her at all times, in case she needed emergency fire." There was a short beat of silence in the dumpster. "Huh?" said Dan. "Except probably now." "Are you sure about this?" said Amy. "Bottle rockets?" Bang! They were getting closer. "No," said Dan. "We're out of time. Just get ready to run, okay?" Amy swallowed and nodded at her brother. Dan pulled 2 rockets from the pack. He stood up and peeked out from under the lid. The kidnappers were near the fence, checking a dumpster 2 down from them. So far, so good. He aimed one of the rockets for the other end of the lot, away from both the entrance and the dumpster. "Here goes," he said. Dan opened the Zippo and lit the fuse. It hissed for half a second, then the rocket shot screaming away.